Hello again. Welcome to JavaScript Funct-on-ions. Appreciate you joining me and watching just some more of the peeling of the layers, as I've been calling them for the days that I've been working on trying to understand functions and the multiple personalities, as I like to call it, for the usages of functions in JavaScript. We've gotten past some of the bigger concepts of functions in JavaScript, constructor functions, and single responsibility type functions, higher order functions, many different types, class, syntax, sugar. And so, what I'm going to want to do today, because I'm still trying to follow along, is I want to break down some code and take some code that you're seeing right now. Um, so, right now, it's set up as a constructor function, and it's got a greet user method on the prototype. And then we're just setting up a couple instances where we're newing up the setup account. Um, let's just run through this real quick, just so we can visualize how the JavaScript engine is actually looking at this from its point of view. First things first is that we know that we're going to have the JavaScript engine is going to run through and do some of its own work. It's going to, as we've seen, it's set up a setup. It's created. Make it sound better. It's created a binding in the global frame named setup account, and that points to a complete function that's in memory that also has a prototype linkage to a greet user. And then in the setup account, once we jump inside of there, is that we're going to have a new execution context. And from that, we are going to have this and args being available to us in this execution context. You'll see at this point in time that this points to the proto of the greet user, and the args actually points to what's being passed in from this new setup account that is being assigned to Rob. Let's just jump forward here, and now this is where we're going to see that when we're setting up this new account here, that the returned value points to this object. Now this object here is the same one as the args. So what we're practically seeing is that we're seeing this username, level, first name, last name, as we see in the object that is being passed in as the args. And then it's returning out, the setup account is returning out the value. The value is the complete object. So it's not, what the values per tray 1, 0, Rob, Simpson. It's the whole object. And along with that object, it also has a little bit of a piggyback in here going on with the proto that points to the greet user. So what that means is that now Rob will actually have the abilities to use the greet user method. So we would now be able to do rob.greetUser. I don't want to take up too much time. Same thing's going to happen here now that we're going to set up an account for Jen. And when we return that value, we're going to have the same thing here. So we have two objects for Rob and Jen. And both of those get the values from the args, and then also have a linkage to the proto, which is the greet user, Dunder. Dunder, I think it is, Dunder. Anyways, let's just continue to just watch. And the point of this being is that I want to change this over from going from constructor function to a class, which we did in the day 8, I want to say. Well, I guess that was day 8. And then to a factory function. So let's just take some time real quick. And I don't like to do it. I see some people do it, and I'd prefer not to, is where I talk and then I speed code. Yeah. You know, I just don't seem to get into that too much, because as I'm trying to follow along with the person talking and the code, it makes it difficult for me. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to just kind of do it a little bit differently here. So in this class here is that we're just gonna be able to just pop that in now, as we've done before. Let's just grab that over there. We don't need that anymore. I think we got it right. Okay, so now we've got a class that has a constructor, and then on the constructor we are getting the args object that's passed in, and then we're assigning to this the object values. And then also we've got a greet user method on the class setup account. And so far, for the constructor function and for the class, it has been important, and it won't work otherwise, is that we always have the new. So we have to add the new keyword in front of setup account in order for this to be able to function properly. So the first thing we do is we're going to go in for Rob, and we are going to assign an account for Rob. And we'll see at this point in time is that the args is being passed in, and the return value is just that. Now, one thing you'll notice that we saw this yesterday. I want to just say yesterday, the day before, when we worked with classes, is that the constructor function for each of the instances, for like Rob, for example, had a direct reference to the greet user in the object. So there was the underscore proto__. I'm pretty sure it's called dunder. But anyways, notice that that's missing now. So no longer is that being piggybacked on the actual new object that we have stored. But because it is a instance of the setup account, it does have direct access to the greet user. And then we'll go forward again. We'll go back into the setup account, into that execution context, and the return value will be the complete object that was passed in. And then when we move forward, we're done. And so Rob is now assigned the full object. And so it's not just the values, okay? It's the full object that is actually returned from Rob. And because it's returned, that's what allows us to do rob.username, rob.level, gen.firstname, gen.lastname, gen.greetuser. So that's why it's important to understand what the actual returned value is. It's not per tray 1, 0, Rob Simpson. It's the actual complete object. So now let's edit this code. And now I want to get to a point to where we take this and we create a factory function. And so with that, I guess I'm going to go old school. let's see. Yeah, so let's just sorry, I'm popping in a little bit of ES6 with older. So the setup account is going to have the same. And let's get these all filled in. Let's remove this for now. And now let's do this without the need for the new keyword. Let's see if I did it right. All right, so now we're just having a function that is returning an object. And so if we move forward on this, is that as soon as we pop into that function's context, is that we're passing in the args, which we're getting from the set account. And so the args is actually the whole object that's being passed in. And then that's going to be return value. And then for gen, we're going to pop in to the context for setup account. And then the object is going to be passed in, and then it's going to be returned. And then we're done. So I don't know how. The only thing that I see is just from a level of being able to quickly comprehend the differences is that there's, like with, and this is boilerplate, this isn't any, there's plenty of, more complexity that can be put into a factory function. Plenty of methods and what have you, but even at this high level, the one thing that I'm noticing really is that we're not having to worry about this, and because if we did actually use this, then it would not point to the correct reference of the instance that it should be pointing to. And also, we no longer have to make sure that the new keyword is used. Now, I'm still working on factory functions. I think I'm going to come back to these in another day for the Funct-on-ions. I still don't feel like I've peeled this layer enough, but at least it gives me an idea of another way that functions can be used in JavaScript. And really, it's a matter of preference, likeness. There's plenty of people that will get on the boat for the constructor function. People get on boat for the class, factories. It's always a preference that people have, or it's a code style that a company might use, what have you. But it just goes to show you that there's many personalities that the function could take on in JavaScript, and I think that each day I'm starting to realize more and more of what it is that's available with using functions in JavaScript. So I think that I'm going to return back to factory functions because I don't think I'm really getting under the hood completely with factory functions. I think they play a big importance especially when it comes to really, being able to succinctly, I think that's how you say it, succinctly, succinct, um, spell out your APIs. So that's something that I do see sticking out of me right now is the ability for APIs to be a little more recognizable and easier to follow along with. That I'm going to follow up with getting back into the ability for functions to be higher order functions, and also into more of the functional approach with functors and monads, and some of that. It's a complete shift in mindsets of going from the concept of object oriented to the concept of functional. So I want to make sure that I cover both of those grounds in this 30-day process. So this gave us a good start on how factory functions work as opposed to class and constructor functions. And again, I'm going to follow up on this and do a little bit more in detailed research on the factory function, just so I'm covering all my grounds. I thank you for your time, and I will see you next day.